Welcome to Warren and Will's Wild Wine Reviews. I'm Warren.
I'm Will.
And we're ready to do another wild wine review. This one is Chappellet.
Chappellet.
Chappellet. And this has been decanting for only about a half hour. I kind of spaced it and forgot to decant it about an hour and a half ago.
You were telling me up at the house that you were trying to get one you hadn't done before, and you pulled it up on Vivino, and sure enough, you'd already done it.
I didn't do it. But the problem is that I didn't pull it up on Vivino until after I purchased it and got it home. And then when I put together my little notes, I pulled up on Vivino, and I was like, oops, had this 2 years ago. So I was trying to have a wine that neither of us had tasted, and I failed.
Well, hey, it's a good teachable moment, because if someone ever asks you,
don't forget to use your Vivino.
Yeah, if someone asks you if you've ever had a wine and you have it in front of you, go, wait a minute, I don't know, and take a picture of it first.
And people are like, you don't, and that happens to me all the time. How do you not remember it? And I was like, here, page through my Vivino, and you'll see. You'll see.
I mean, the thing that I mentioned is that, this looks like a lot of other wine labels. You might look at a label and be like, that looks vaguely familiar, but not of any memory.
And one of the things I always tell people, you can't remember them all. But
nope.
But do I listen to my own advice?
And especially if it's a second or third bottle, you have a really good reason to not remember them all.
Yeah, so let's see what we got.
All right, let's get into this one. Okay, now to me, this is kind of an austere aroma for a Napa cab.
Well, there's plenty of oak. Not a lot else.
Oak, and
it's only been open for 35 minutes, so that's part of
I'm getting some dried fruit character. I'm getting some, like, maybe a little bit of prune, some raisiny type of aromas.
Maybe a little blackberry.
I mean, I realize raisin's kind of generic because it's literally a dried grape. So I'm just saying it smells like dried grapes, which is, probably accurate.
Grape, yes. Yeah. What do you know? I mean, it is one of the only actual ingredients in here is grape and water.
Wow, so the palate, this is one of those things where you can have an aroma and palate that aren't necessarily, I'm not going to say they're diametrically opposed.
But they don't match up.
They don't match up. They're probably going to become more in alignment as the wine breathes and opens. Yeah. Another good reason for us to go on and on and on when we do these videos is some of these wines are fundamentally different, or at least more, in this case, the aroma and the flavor might have meshed more by the end of the review as opposed to at the beginning.
I mean, I describe this as tight, which really means that it hasn't opened up yet. And so I'm only getting blackberry
but with a lot of potential. I mean, you can really sense all the flavor.
I can tell that this is going to open up, and I knew it was a bottle I should decant, but I've had a lot. I'm leaving for Ireland on Monday, so I've got a lot going on. I'll be gone for a month. Won't be any impact for you guys because we've got a couple of these in the can to make up for it, so one will drop every week while we're gone. This is actually the first one we filmed since the videos went live. The first video is up. We're getting some feedback, and it's all been nice feedback. A couple of people suggested we could use better lighting, so we're on that.
We are trying to do the best that we can with, the thing about Floyd is that the weather patterns here are variable. And this is the summertime, so we'll get some really bright sunny days, which has presented problems of its own. And then today is overcast, which has led to the opposite problem. So,
It occurs to me, come wintertime, we may do them at my house on the Collator.
Yeah. So, and that will give us nice uniform lighting.
Right. Then we can
control it however we want.
Do a lot more with the lighting there once it's cooler and we can't do it outside. I was like, where are we going to do it? I'm like, duh.
Hooray for human domination of the environment. Well, partial domination of the environment.
All right, so let me give you the information that we have on this. This gets 4 out of 4 stars at Vivino. I realized I didn't write down how many reviews. How many reviews they have. It was significant.
Yeah, for a Napa cab at that price range, I would assume it would be.
$91.89 is the average price. I think I paid $95. It was just under $100. May have been over $100 once the tax was on it. These guys are located in Napa. It was founded in 1967 by Don Chappellet. It's family owned. Now the second generation is working, and it sounds like they were running it, but I'm not positive on that one. founded in 67, so, you know, the kids are probably in their 40s, early 50s,
right.
so there's no reason they couldn't be running it.
Right.
But Dad might still be there.
Sure.
Just I couldn't find any real information about that on their website. In fact, most of the information I found, I had to go to a wiki to get it because their website did not have, I mean, it was certainly, you know, easy enough to get directions, book a tour, get some wine.
Yep.
But actually giving you a lot of information, there wasn't a lot of information.
They're just hoping you're going to come and visit.
You know, and that's fine. I'd like to. Their property's 640 acres, but they only farm 102.
1 square mile. Okay.
Yeah, 102 acres of the vineyard. 65 acres are Cabernet, with the remainder consisting of, you're going to recognize these blocks of Merlot, Malbec, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, and Chenin Blanc.
Oh, one white grape out of the bunch.
White grape.
Interesting, huh?
And they are certified organic. That is the info that I have on them. And you can see it's obvious that you know, they do a Bordeaux blend.
Right.
And those are the grapes required, except for the Chenin Blanc.
Except for the Chenin Blanc.
Those are the grapes
And it's
required.
odd because they're
not the only grapes. You could have, there are some other ones. I mean, I would toss the Petit Verdot and do Petit Syrah.
Right.
That's just me.
The funny thing in there is Chenin Blanc. I mean, that's a grape of the Loire.
Yeah,
if they were going for a full-on Bordeaux experience, you would expect it to be Sauvignon Blanc. But if the climate is suitable for it, or if it's just been real, you know, they might have planted some back in the day and it was really popular with their customers. And they're like, okay, plant more Chenin Blanc and let's make this a regular.
No idea.
Yeah.
No idea. And this one's already starting to open up more. You know, I'm feeling a little bit of vanilla just crept in.
I'm picking up more blueberry underneath that vanilla.
Yeah, there's some blueberry too. So it's opening up. I mean, this is a Napa Cab. It tastes just like a mid-level Napa Cab.
Yep.
You know, what you'd expect it.
In all the best ways you would expect from that. Yeah.
You know, in the way that when you get a Shackled or a Apothic Red or a Ravage, they all have some very similar things. Well, the good Napa Cabs at about $100, many of them, most of them, all have a lot of the same tasting notes.
And the thing is
surprised if they didn't really.
I would imagine that a lot of that is by design. I mean, this is the point. One of the points I've always made about wine, and this is not a judgment or a critique. It's just an objective statement of fact. If beer is like punk rock and it's always constantly trying to invent itself, and even when it's getting hidebound, it's still like trying to, you know, overturn things. Wine
turns into Green Day.
Yeah, exactly. But
Green Day.
Wine is classical music. Wine is the way classical music exists is that you're supposed to play it in a certain way, and you can stay within. You've got some room to maneuver, but you have to stay within a certain kind of confine to do it.
Punk music absolutely has its place, but I don't want to drink it. You know, if you're like, hey, the music and the words don't matter, I don't want to think your ingredients don't matter.
What I mean more than anything else is that beer.
Oh no, I was just taking your
overextending the metaphor
further than it needed to.
Actually, no, that's actually a pretty good point in a lot of ways, because I feel like a lot of West Coast IPAs became very, very ridiculous there for a while.
13%.
Yeah, and they scaled it back a little bit because they realized.
I like the big ones.
Oh, I do too. But I can't remember which one it was. It was a double IPA, and it was from a brewery I usually like. I think it might have been Great Divide, and it was so hoppy they over malted it. And it was undrinkable.
Put a lot of malt in,
but it was undrinkable. It wasn't pleasant to drink.
I mean, have you had Dogfish Head's 120 minutes?
Yes.
It's so malty, it's sweet.
Which
isn't something I expect from a big hot bomb.
I'd gone on a diet around that time, and unfortunately, I drank a bottle of Dogfish Head in 20 minutes, and all I lost was the evening.
Right? Yeah. I mean, essentially, it's like just drinking a bottle of wine. 13 to 18.
Yeah, well, I can't remember exactly what the alcohol content is.
But it was over 13.
The thing is if you think of it as just a beer and you have it after other beers that are also, between 6 and 8%, you don't realize the amount of alcohol that you're putting into your body. Well, you do later, and then you don't do that again, hopefully.
I remember my first Super Bowl party. One of my friends got really, really sick, and we ended up getting him a cab home.
Right.
And his wife was furious, and he's like, "Oh, he had 4 beers," and she called me, "Is this?" Well, she didn't call me.
Right.
I talked to her. She's like, "Is that true?" I was like, "Yeah." Poor dude didn't know that he had a 9%, 9.8% IPA.
Right.
He thought he was drinking 4%.
Right.
And he was like 150, 160 pounds, short guy.
He was trying to be responsible.
He's like, I'm only having 4.
Yeah.
Over the course of 4 or 5 hours, I should be, no.
Yeah.
Nope, he was not good. But, he came in and said, I left my car at at Dogtown. And his wife said, I should hope so. And I mean, I walked him in, and so I was able to say, look, he didn't have that much to drink. It's just that he didn't realize that it was 9% alcohol.
Well, and everybody hits the guardrails every so often.
Yeah,
the important thing is to take note of it when it happens.
Right. I mean, he knew. He's like, I can't drive. And I'm like, I agree. And I couldn't drive either, but I had planned that, and I had a cab coming. And so I just paid the cab a little extra, and we got him home first.
Yeah, no, it's funny how those different things can affect you. Hops are actually a sedative. And I know this because I worked in a hop yard briefly, and it made me loopy. Like,
it can also be a little bit of a hallucinogen, I've been told.
They're in the cannabis family. They're not They don't have THC in them, which is why it's legal to grow them. But they are a cannabinoid vine.
Yeah, and try to beat the beer industry and say you can't have
hops.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're so established at this point. But if
money talks.
Yeah, something tells me though that if they were even the slightest bit THC active, somehow there would be some kind of thing. Anyway,
I don't think so because
really?
Well,
it'd be an interesting
if I get into
agricultural
my whole thought on why they went after THC, we're way over into politics,
right?
Because it was politics.
I know exactly where you're going with that.
I'm not going
Absolutely.
there.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
Such a great phrase. I've really come to appreciate that one.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Man, Paul Stanley used to say that to me almost every time we talked.
I used to dislike that phrase.
He wasn't wrong.
No, the thing is about that phrase is that it used to bother me, and I realized that it wasn't the phrase itself that bothers me. Mm-hmm. It was the way one particular person I used to know used it. And it was always said, and she wasn't trying to be dismissive, but I would have.
It's often used dismissively.
Well, but it's one thing to be talking about like the state of society or politics and go, well, it is what it is. But if I just told you I had a really awful day and you're like, well, it is what it is, I'm going to feel a little bit put down.
Thanks, pal.
Right, and that's what she did. And I knew in my heart that she wasn't being dismissive, but...
No, we were usually talking about Gene Simmons or about something else. And
you're just like, what are you going to do?
It is what it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Sopranos phrase is, what are you going to do?
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Which I have also co-opted, because it's useful.
So many phrases just popped into my head when you said Sopranos, and I can't share most of them because one of the things
is ostensibly a family channel.
We're now signed up for we've actually got signed up for some affiliate programs, and one of them is all like they don't want any swearing. And hey, Vivino, can I ask you a question? You can't have anything on your site that's objectionable, like alcoholic beverages. Did you guys just buy some language that a lawyer popped up and no one looked at it? Because I mean, that's kind of what you do.
Yeah. No, that's the funny thing is that we
so we know a disclaimer on our website that we are not promoting alcohol use. We're just talking about it when we drank it. We're not suggesting you drink. Oh yeah, we are, but we're not.
The funny thing about alcohol, and I know Vivino is based out of Denmark, not America, but it did bring to mind the American relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
Is the American relationship with alcohol is that if you have a glass of wine with lunch, you're an alcoholic. But if you get smashed after 5 p.m.
everything's fine.
Every Friday and Saturday, then you're more or less normal. Yeah. And that's the weird schizophrenic relationship that we have with alcohol, where it's fine to enjoy it as long as you don't talk about enjoying it too much and don't do it before a certain time of day.
Yeah. I mean, I don't tend to drink during the day.
Me either.
Well, it's after 5 o'clock,
right?
Guys, but it's after 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
But at any rate,
over the yard arm.
During football season, I mean, I love NFL football. You probably guys may have noticed. I think I presented my credentials on that when we did the
Drew Bledsoe
the Drew Bledsoe wine. So, but at any rate.
Are you trying to find the original thread?
I lose my thread.
Oh.
Yeah.
We were talking about the schizophrenic relationship with alcohol and drinking. Drinking during the day.
But I drink during the day when I'm watching football.
Yeah.
Start at 1 o'clock.
Sure.
Now, I used to drink beer, but now I drink wine, so I drink it a little slower because wine's a slower sipping thing.
Absolutely.
And which is nice. I like that.
Well, and also if you're getting not distracted, but if you're watching the game and you're talking with people, you're not necessarily your attention isn't necessarily on drinking. Drinking is there.
I don't watch the games with many other people. I don't want to talk to people.
Well,
you see me at the Super Bowl party, and so far it hasn't been my team.
I was just thinking of times you and Logan and I would get together.
You know, right. As you know, I have a Super Bowl party every year. And if the Cowboys make it to the Super Bowl, I won't have a party that year. Logan and I and maybe 2 other people who are all Cowboys fans will watch that game because we're not interested in talking to anybody.
Right, yeah.
We don't want to discuss anything. We want to watch the damn game.
Yep.
Because I have very little memory of the last 4 or 5 Super Bowls. And that's not because I got really drunk.
No, it's not.
It's because it's my party. And thought 20, 30 people would show up, and well over 50 or 60 people showed up at my last Super Bowl party.
Yep.
And the thing is, nobody at that party knew more than 3 or 4 people except me. I knew everybody. So I spent
knew a bunch of people there.
whole night talking. Well, you actually may have been the person who knew the next most.
Yeah, I think
but
so.
most
Probably.
people knew only 2 or 3 other people. At
Yeah,
the
no,
party.
they separated into groups.
Yeah, I have a really, really wide friend group.
Yep.
I mean, I do not just have people who work in the wine industry, people who are into heavy metal,
right?
People who live in Floyd, although that's the only people that were at the party, Floyd or Blacksburg.
Right, yeah,
but
yeah.
I have really a lot of different friend groups.
Well, and I mean, to be fair, in February, it's not like a lot of people from out of Floyd are going to be heading into Floyd. I don't remember,
sure.
It wasn't icy or anything,
No,
but I mean,
no.
that time of year,
The weather was fine.
Roads can be iffy, and it gets dark earlier, and, people aren't adventurous, and they're worried about getting home safely. But yeah, no, that was probably the large. I mean, and also the thing is that you'd rent it out.
Some amazing wines.
But you'd rent it out the entire space.
I did. I rented out the bar.
As opposed to just having a large table.
Right.
Or
No,
two.
we had the entire, and I did that on purpose because.
Oh yeah.
The last one cost me too much because people kept saying put it on his tab,
Yep.
and they weren't my friends.
Right.
Although the funny thing is, I did this to avoid it, and it was actually more money than any of the time I've done it. At
I wonder because the thing is that I didn't ask on behalf of too many people. I think I asked on behalf of 2 or 3 people total.
Yeah, no, that wasn't a problem.
No, but how did so many people? Did you think
I invited most of them.
Okay, so you just thought fewer
a number
would
of people
accept.
brought 2 or 3 friends.
Oh,
But,
okay.
I invited at least one person in every group.
I was asking because a friend of mine is having a cookout this Friday, and she was like, yeah, I kind of thought only 30, 40 people would say yes, but it turned out close to 100 did. And I was like, darling, you should never invite people thinking that most won't say yes, because that Murphy is just waiting going, okay, I got you.
Yeah, and unfortunately we were having it at a restaurant.
Yeah.
So while I had a case of really good wine, I did not share that with most people. Now, mind you, I paid for all the drinks that night.
Yep.
So the fact that I wouldn't share the good stuff with people who couldn't appreciate it wasn't horrible. They got to order whatever they wanted.
And a lot of the people there that who aren't really big wine drinkers would have been like, oh, we don't want to really.
They wouldn't have even wanted it.
Exactly.
They didn't want it. They were ordering beers and shots. And
most the one of the things I really like about Floyd is that the people in that kind of situation are not going to go I don't really like wine, but I'll try a glass. So you know what? If it's so great, I don't really want it to be wasted on me. I'll just get a beer instead.
Yeah,
that's the kind of people they are. Yeah, which is fine.
So this is opening up even more. You got to give this one an hour. Because we're now creeping up. Yeah, it's been an hour since I originally decanted it. So we're getting there. This is not a wine to be drank straight out of the bottle.
Right.
You will not get the full appreciation of it. It's a good, solid Napa cab. I mean, it's, and I'm sure these people aren't going to want to hear it. It's not a Walla Washington double back.
Right. Well, but the thing is,
it's good. It's really good. I didn't overpay.
I think they're banking on the fact, because one of the nice things, if you nail a regional style, if you nail a specific type of thing.
Well, if you nail Napa.
Exactly. But if you're doing that kind of style and you nail the style that you're going for, I mean, I don't think, there's a lot of ego in the wine world, so maybe somebody would. But if you're a winemaker who takes pride in his craft, it's good to know that you're not being confused or mistaken for something else, that you're being mistaken
Nobody's
for.
ever going to drink this and think that they've got a Zinfandel.
Right. Or an Australian Shiraz or something like
You're
that.
never going to make that
It's
mistake.
very distinct
This
style.
is a Napa cab.
And prior to becoming friends with Warren, I didn't really have a good idea of what Napa cabs tasted like. I mean, I'd had cabs from Napa, but there is a price gradient.
That was my main go-to wine.
Right.
And I slowly moved into Napa cabs.
I remember
even
that.
though Napa cab
happening.
is what got me into reds to start with. It was the Zins that was really just doing it for me. And the funny thing is now, I mean, I don't dislike Zins. I don't mind Zins, but they just don't light my fire like they used to.
I have a theory that if you, and this is not true of everyone who likes wine, and it's not even necessarily a mark that you're a more mature or more better quality wine taster, but I have noted a distinct trend. It's more than 50% of people who get into wine and stick with it for a while and move around and try different things. There is a general trend towards liking wines with higher acidity. in general across the board, and it doesn't have to.
It's the mouthfeel.
Yeah, well, and the point I'm trying to make is it doesn't have to mean that they're all of a sudden the wines they're drinking start getting more expensive, or they start.
Although they do,
they can, and they will eventually if we're humans are easily dissatisfied, and one of the nice ways to get up to the next best thing is to pay more money for it. But there is a tendency to move towards higher acidity wines. Now, that being said, there are some world-class A-plus Zinfandels out there that cost quite a bit of money, and they're very, very good at being Zinfandel. But one thing Zinfandel can't really be is high acid. You can have higher acid Zinfandels
to do that.
No, I mean, you'd either have to do something that is contrary to the nature of the grape, or you have to artificially screw around with the acidity yourself, which you are legally allowed to do, and in some cases it's not a bad idea.
I would just throw in 5% of Petite Syrah and Golden.
Well, that's the nice thing about Zin, is it's such a good blending grape.
Oh yeah, it's great.
If you're looking at a bunch of Zin and going, well, I want to raise the acidity on this, well, just mix it with a bunch of Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon. Bam, red blend.
There you
done.
Go. Yep.
And there are a lot of people doing that. I mean,
that's why so many of the red blends are really good. It was funny because I didn't really realize that I liked Bordeaux blends. I'd been drinking them for a good long while, but they were calling them California red blends.
Right.
And then for whatever reason, Vivino pulled some of them out. And I'm like, oh, my 10 favorite red blends were all Bordeaux. And then I'd been drinking some Bordeaux's, and then I learned what was in the mixture. And so now I'll go and try and find out what are the grapes. Is it just a California blend?
Right.
Or is it a California Bordeaux blend? Because a lot of California Bordeaux blends are, I mean, I can only assume that the makers assume that Americans are either stupid or afraid.
I would say it's more
Bordeaux
afraid.
blend.
More afraid,
and they
probably.
see the word Bordeaux, and they're like, oh no, that's too French for me, or something.
I would say, I mean, especially at this price range, the average drinker of this kind of Napa Cab isn't going to have the same fear that someone buying a bottle of Apothic Red or Predator would. What it is,
if you're dropping $100 on a Napa Cab, you probably know what a Bordeaux blend is.
And if you are of a certain age, then you know what a Bordeaux blend is. Just, I mean, the thing is back in America in like the 60s and 70s, like if you were drinking French wine, it was probably either Burgundy or Bordeaux. Those are the, if you hear people above age, like, I don't know, I want to say like 55, 60, talk about wine, they will say French, Bordeaux, and Burgundy. It just rolls off their tongue because those are the two French wines that they know about. Not that you couldn't find other French wines back then, but it was more difficult.
Marvelous French Syrah. We talked about that before.
Yep, from down the road.
But I had it in Belfast, Ireland, and they couldn't tell me whose it was, because the owner had died. The owner of the wine shop, not wine shop, the wine bar. And so they bought it, and they had what they had, and they didn't know where anything.
No
came
provenance,
from.
no chain of custody. I
mean, it had their name on it, so so it was worthless to me. There was nothing on that label to tip off who it was. Now it was a much lighter wine than I'm used to, but it was a red that both my wife and I could drink.
That's amazing.
Right, and so I was like, I got to get more of this.
That's a unicorn right there.
Because that's, the thing is, if you can get someone to drink a red a little more regularly, then you can find a few others that are like it, but a little
you break down that
and
wall.
You slide them into, but we couldn't do it.
So the funny thing is...
But anytime I see a French Syrah now, I give it a shot.
The funny thing is red wine has that it's unidirectional, because you can bring white drinkers into red wine, but if a person is a dyed-in-the-wool red wine drinker, it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder, and the main way I've found is with food. Because especially with lighter things, like with I mean, I know that you like red wine with shellfish, but shellfish is one avenue of approach. Another thing is anything with a lot of cream or dairy in it. Red wines usually, it's weird because red wine goes really well with cheese, and so you think it would work well together, but like cream sauces, especially like white cream sauces and red wine, don't always pair well together, and so that's a way to work in the buttery Chardonnays or things like that.
Now, I read somewhere, and I just don't know if it's true or not, but like the reason that you don't serve a red with fish or seafood is that 25% of humans have a gene that makes that, when mixed with fish, taste like copper, like blood.
That's the shellfish specifically, not fish in general.
I don't have that gene, but the reason isn't that you don't serve it because it doesn't taste good with it. No. You don't serve it because you can't know if your guests will have that issue.
You're taking a shot, and if it's a bad shot, so then it's really, really bad.
To do it when 1 in 4 people will just be like, ugh, if they have that combination, so you just don't do it. For myself, I know I don't have that issue, so,
so you're fine
happily, give me some shrimp and some lobster, and throw in a Dungeness crab while you're at it, and I'll pound a bottle of wine with. I won't pound it, but
here's a really good point to bring up with that is that the reason red wine works so well with a lot of different foods, especially protein-rich foods, is tannins, which red wine has and white wines do not.
Abundance, yes.
Tannins' job in a plant structure, a plant system, is holding proteins in place, keeping them from moving around. And so part of the reason that red wine and steak, or red wine and any kind of red meat traditionally go really well together is all that protein. The tannin is doing what it does naturally and binding to the protein. And when that tannin is bound to the protein, flavors leap out of the wine that you had no idea was there.
And out of the steak sometimes, too.
Absolutely, there are things that happen that are the result of the meshing of the two of them. And that same thing can happen with fish. I mean, like salmon, and I know you don't like Pinot Noir, but you could do the same thing with salmon and Cabernet Sauvignon, or salmon and Zin.
When it comes to foods, I understand that there are lots of wines that I'm not a fan of that are just fine if I'm eating them with food. I can do
Pinot Noir and salmon is a wonderful
with food. I can do Cabernet, not Cabernet. Of course, I can do Cabernet. I love Cabernet, but I can do a Chardonnay with certain foods.
Yep, definitely. Especially a heavily oaked Chardonnay, because the nice thing about heavily oaked Chardonnay is getting back to the tannin thing. I said white wines don't have tannins. They don't have them naturally. If you put them in oak,
well, of course, Chardonnays can. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, you pick up that tannin.
No
from
one's
the oak.
putting a Chenin Blanc into oak. I mean,
you could.
Someone might do it, but
I would highly recommend against it.
One of the things I'm wondering if we should get a hold of John Malkovich's wines, because he is purposely blending wines.
Oh, that would be fun.
That don't go together traditionally.
I would love that.
Now,
honestly,
when you read his stuff, it really sounds like he thinks he's cool, and he's just doesn't know what he was doing. But I want to taste the wines and find out.
Honestly, in some ways, that would be more interesting than a scientific method, because then it really, if he stumbles across something, it really is just a matter of putting things together. Part of the reason they weren't blended traditionally is that, like, for instance, if you ever see Riesling blended with something, that's very unusual, because prior to, I'm going to say sometime in the 20th century, Riesling was not grown. Well, okay, there was places in Australia, but by and large, in European culture, Riesling was only grown in certain parts of Germany and in certain parts of northeastern France.
Yep, I was going to say France.
Yeah, exactly, and there wasn't grown much of anywhere else. I mean, there are probably other
Those
European
are the only
countries.
Two places they can. I mean, that small area in France is the only other place that I've ever had that gives me all
Riesling.
the notes that I get
similar
from
climate.
Your typical.
I mean, they're
German
right on the
Riesling.
border there.
Yeah.
But the thing is that Riesling as a blending varietal, it's not that it's a bad or good blending varietal. It's just that no one ever really did it. I mean, there were some other indigenous German grapes like Gewürztraminer and Savanner. But if you're talking about blending Riesling with Chardonnay or Riesling with anything but those indigenous German grapes, it didn't happen. Not because nobody wanted to try it, but up until recently, it wasn't
grapes to
exactly, and everything was localized.
But with Malkovich, we're talking like 50% Cab and 50% Pinot Noir.
Right. Give it a shot. See what happens. I mean, it'll probably destroy the Pinot Noir, and it'll just taste kind of like a slightly lighter-bodied Cab.
Let's water down the Cab.
I mean, the thing about Pinot Noir that I would say that would make it a bad blending varietal is that with Riesling, at least as a blending varietal with white wines, it has that screaming acidity and that intense floral character. If you blended really good Riesling with really good, really good Chenin Blanc or something that was just as powerful but less floral.
That would probably improve a Pinot Grigio by a great deal.
Absolutely, yeah. If you found a Pinot Grigio,
I don't know that I'm saying much there because I'm not a white drinker, but.
But the thing about Pinot Noir is that with that kind of delicacy and that kind of light-bodied character, all you're going to do is obliterate it.
Yeah, that's my.
You're not really. It's not really adding much of anything to the overall.
He's a movie star, so he's convinced he's right. Mm-hmm. I mean, now, and I'm probably not being nice enough to John Malkovich.
Well, and
I like a couple of his movies.
He might be self-aware enough to go, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just gonna. I
know better than to slam him for being an actor who gets into wines, because one of my favorite wines is an NFL quarterback who got into wines. Yep. So it can be done, and maybe he pulled it off. Maybe he's got a genius winemaker who knows exactly how to do it. But I am thinking I want to pick up some Malkovich wines, just so we can. I mean, that's really out there.
And I want to say, as a graduate in a scientific field, even if I don't like a single wine that he makes, and it's unlikely that I will, because I generally am pretty generous, and unless you're really, really batting zero, it's unlikely that I'll hate it.
I'm a lot meaner.
Yes.
I'm
a lot more likely to give the benefit of the doubt
about what I'm after. And generally, actually, Will talked me into basically going up a half star on everything I was doing. And I'm
if we're together, if we're out together.
Well, but I actually eventually internalized that, because I was looking at everybody else's reviews and I realized I was the meanest guy on Vivino. So
well, you're rating them based on whether or not they're a Napa cab. Yeah. And if they're not, they get like 2 stars.
I did stop doing that. But no, I was never quite that mean. I always understood varietally correct.
Yes.
But at any rate, I mean, I've always rated stuff about a half star lower than Will has.
Yes.
Which, I envy him, because that means he enjoys everything a little bit more.
Well, and also, it's funny because Warren and I kind of met in the middle, because I realized, I should probably I can be as effusive in my verbiage as I want, but I was looking at the star ratings and being like, I really like the wine, but is it really 4 stars worthy? And I was going, you know what? It's better than 3. To me, 3 stars indicates it is meeting all the benchmark qualities I want a wine to have. It has no obvious faults. If I were offered it again, I wouldn't refuse it. I probably wouldn't buy it. And I'm like, 3.5 stars puts it in between something that is really good and something that is just hitting all the benchmark qualities. So 3.5. If I
for
like
me,
something,
that's 3.5.
Yep.
3 means I didn't hate it,
Yeah.
and I will politely sip on it and drink it very slowly over the course of a night.
Oh, 3 men I would gladly sip on as long as I didn't have to pay for it. There was nothing polite about it.
4 generally means that I'll drink it again.
Right.
I mean, I'd give this one 4 stars, maybe 4.1. It's creeping a little past there. 4.5 means I'm actively looking for it. 5 means it was sublime. I mean, for me, that's when if you go to my reviews on Vivino, go to Vivino, follow both of us, and then that's what I mean when I give those stars.
A part of it for me has to do with the fact that on my budget, I don't drink wines like this basically unless we're hanging out together.
Yeah.
And so 4.5 to me isn't just a reflection on the wine's overall quality. There's a subjective component that's like, how often do I get to have something like this? Well, every week now that Warren and I are doing this, but when Warren and I weren't doing this, it might be like once a month or maybe less often than that. And so there is that little thing that goes into it. It's really hard to give a subjective review sometimes, because you look at a wine and go, overall quality-wise, the wine meets 3.5 star level. But I might not run across something, and that could have to do with price, it could have to do with availability, it could have to do with it's really freaking weird and we're not sure if we're going to see this again.
Yeah.
It might be like one of those, 1976 Margaux or 1988 Chateau Neuf de Pape's, where it's like, we will probably never ever come across anything like this ever again.
I wish we'd been doing this blog back then. Boy, that would have been wild.
That would have been a lot of fun.
I purchased so many bottles of wine. The great thing was that all the money from the estate sale went to a scholarship.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So that was very nice. So
Yep.
that also meant I got to write it off on my taxes.
Yep.
And I bought a lot of old wine. I mean, a lot of old wine.
Old wine that you wouldn't find anywhere else.
Right. People would come into my cellar. I'm like, my God, how did you manage to sit on that? I'm like, sit on that?
No. Somebody else did that for me.
Someone else did that for me. Yeah.
Your eggs are in a different nest, Mario.
And so here with this, I'm kind of torn, because I like my Napa cabs 10 to 15 years old. I like all my wines 10 to 15 years old, really.
And this is a young one.
But at the same time, we're reviewing this for people, and so we want to try to review wines you can get your hands on. So this is the one that I could buy in the wine shop today. I mean, I didn't buy it today, but it's there. This is one you can find now. We'll have a link to it. It'll probably be wine.com, because they're the ones that seem to have everything.
And I have often wondered this. There's so many things about wine that make me wonder how much cognitive, confirmation bias there is in the wine world. You have a lot of people who drink their wines young, and I find myself going, well, I mean, if you go to a wine bar, by and large, unless they're really, really industrious and have a lot of space, and they're thinking at a very deep level, they're probably going to have stuff that's relatively recent. They might have a few library wines, but unless you're building an actual vault of wines with the aim to release them strategically over the next couple of decades, what's going to happen is you go there and the Napa cabs are going to be 4, 5, 6 years old and so on. And I've wondered how many people just don't actually know what older wines taste like, just because how often do you...
Where do you get them?
Well, exactly, and not only that,
You know?
people are impatient. They buy wines intending to set them aside, and then they drink them.
The vintage cellar, they get a lot of library releases.
Yeah.
And, they'll call me, drop me an email, or point it out the minute I walk through the door.
Yep.
Because they know I want some age in my wines. We'll be doing a 2009 that was released recently and that you can actually get your hands on.
Yeah.
I've seen it in 3 different wine stores. It's really, really nice. We'll be doing that very soon. So I think a Margaux.
Yeah.
And it's like $30 and it's a 2009.
Wow.
So
that's
it's
amazing.
When I had one and I dropped a message, and you talk about, I can't remember 2000 wines.
Right.
So, I'm like, hey, what's your most interesting wine? What's got age on it? He's like, well, this is the most interesting. And I didn't like that one, I must confess. So we're actually going to review it. So there will be a negative review for me. I think Will might like it very much, but I didn't.
Probably.
Hopefully it was just a bad bottle and I'll love the next one. But at any rate, he gave me that. And then I dropped him a message and said, hey man, I want to buy the rest of them. He's like, oh, I would be amazed if we had anything that old in here. I'm like, dude, you handed it to me yesterday.
Right, yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, we got it. You can get more of those, and I got 3 more of those. And then I was visiting it was my in-laws at Christmas, and they gave me a gift card to the local wine shop there, which
Mr.
was
Bill's?
Mr. Bill's.
Yeah.
But they just changed their name.
To
2 guys, 2 younger guys bought it.
It's a biblical
It's a
reference
biblical
to Psalms.
reference. That puts me off a bit.
Really?
I'm an atheist, man.
I know, but
and
I mean,
if you hate atheists, I don't care.
No, but I the reason I like it is there's so many Christians who really want to get away from alcohol or say that all references in the Bible.
It's bizarre because, Paul talks. Jesus, remember, the miracle was turning water into wine.
Well, he also said there'd be wine in heaven. He said it to the disciples.
Now, the only down thing, the thing they always point to was Paul. God, I don't want to go into Christianity, but it was Paul talking about
drunkenness.
It's like, being naked in front of people.
Yeah.
But he also told Timothy, drink some wine with your meal. It's good for your stomach.
Well, the thing is that back
that's
then...
it. Those are the 2 things he said that I know.
No, I know.
Of. And please don't bother to correct me if he said more. I don't care.
But here's the thing. Back then is you had to drink wine because a lot of the water wasn't safe to drink.
Right. Well, that's the thing.
So everybody...
Have we talked about
We did.
that?
We did.
Okay,
we talked.
Yeah.
The two forms of human evolution in regards to our relationship with water were either boiling, and that's how you get coffee and tea, or fermentation, and that's how you get beer and wine.
And those are the things that keep you from dying.
Yep.
If there's stuff in your water.
One is heat, which kills the bacteria, and then the other is introducing meaner bacteria that will kill the bacteria that will kill you, and the meaner bacteria don't kill you.
Right.
Or die first, and then you can just get them out. Yeah. But if you drink, I've drunk a wine that was straight out of the fermentation tank that definitely had live yeast in it. The funny thing about yeast and about wine in general is that it's like, well, water's unsafe. We can't drink it. Why not? Well, it's got bacteria in it. So we do. Well, we put a bunch of bacteria in this water,
other bacteria, and then it dies.
And then you could drink it.
And we drink it.
Yep.
And it makes us happy.
It makes us very happy.
When I go to a metal show, I went to see Kiss a couple of times in their farewell tour. I've seen them 40 times, believe it or not. and when I looked around, and there was 3 other guys with long hair like mine. Now, am I a nonconformist, or am I just luckier than the rest of them and all my hair isn't gone?
Well, and I mean, other things might. I mean, it could be that some of them have jobs where they wouldn't feel comfortable having long hair.
Wouldn't feel comfortable. They get fired.
Right, get fired.
America still thinks that French peasants should be the arbiter of our hairstyle.
Exactly.
And if you want to understand that, the upper class had long hair until the 1770s, 1780s, when the French Revolution happened and the peasants started guillotining any dude with long hair because that was a sign of nobility.
Yep.
And so at that time, men went all across the world, especially in America, where we decided, we had just freed ourselves from a king, and they were doing the same thing. So we really felt very close to them, and all of our dudes cut their hair.
Is that why that happened?
That is how it happened. And
I've always wondered that, because
200 years later, more than 200 years later, we're still wearing short hair because of dead French peasants. They're not making decisions for me.
I am so glad that you told me that, because I'd always wondered, because if you look at
never said that?
I don't think so, no.
I tell that story all the time.
The 1820s, 1830s, if you look at the engravings and whatever they're called, lithotypes or whatever they were, if you look at the guys from the Revolutionary era,
they all had
longer. Some of them were wigs. Yeah, but some of them had naturally long hair.
Right.
And then by the 1820s, 1830s, everybody has short hair.
Yep.
And I always wonder, like, I mean, I know fashion trends.
Happened, yeah.
Well, fashion
it wasn't
trends
fashion.
change.
I
No,
mean,
I know.
I suppose it was fashion.
Right.
I mean, if your point here is that nobody should look at you, dude, you're going about this
the wrong way.
Wrong. You know, if you don't want to be admired, leave.
Yeah.
You know, and he was just looking at me like, what?
Yeah.
You know, he was like totally shit. Because one, he was used to scaring people. He was a big guy. And I was just like, I'm looking at a dude who did a really good job at being a goth.
Yeah.
But if you have an issue with me looking at you, what the hell are you dressed like that for?
Yeah. What was the point?
Right.
It's funny though. I don't know what year that was, but by the time I was in middle school, high school, early high school,
this would have been the 90s.
Okay, so this is like late 90s, early 2000s. The I don't know if goth had entered a different phase or if I just knew a different brand of goths. I found them to be like the nicest, most accepting people.
Goths, they cover the whole map, just like everybody else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
this particular one was really getting off on intimidating people.
Right,
so
exactly.
he decided
Maybe because of his size.
And he decided he was going to intimidate me.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work.
That's never going to happen.
No, what there was a I guess he's like probably about 7 or 8 years older than me. And we were over at his dad's house, and he was going through his goth. I mean, I guess he kind of still is going through a goth phase. He kind of went into it, and he came out of it mostly, but never really left it. Nicest, sweetest guy, and he had this collectible card game, and I was like 8 or 9, so I was just asking, what's that do? And he was just the nicest guy. He was explaining all these card game mechanics. My dad came in, and he was like, well, are you bugging Go, Paul? Come on, let's go. And Go was like, it was fine. I really enjoyed explaining it to him. And my dad's like, Go, Paul. He was like, I'm sure that a lot of other parents like maybe like give you a hard time for how you look. He's like, I don't care about any of that. You can wear as many rings in your nose as long as you're nice to my boy.
Yeah. You know, in this case, I did not bother to tell this kid. He was like 18 or 19. That I owned one of the top magazines that was purchased by goths at the time, which was Dreams of Decadence. You know, when I wanted to go high goth, I could. I just didn't see any reason to be high goth.
Right.
In the T, but he was just like going back and forth. And as far as
probably,
I could tell, he wasn't actually going anywhere. He was just there
to get his
be
validation
seen and to get on people
Yep.
for looking at him.
Yep.
I was just like, okay, you clearly want people to look at you, or you wouldn't
and
look
you
like
want to
that.
And you want to pick
and
a fight
now
about
you
it.
want to get on them for looking
Yep.
at you. And you may scare the hell out of all the rest of these people here, but dude, you're not scaring me. You know, I mean, I'm a goth. I was a goth for a while there. I was a metalhead in the 80s. You know, I'm always going to be part of some counterculture. I'm never going to be part of the mainstream.
Yep.
And just don't be a jerk.
Well, the other thing is don't make your counterculture identity. Don't make your identity about being counterculture. I mean, by all means, like it is a part of your identity, but don't make it such a part of your identity that you forget all the other parts of who you are as a person.
I'm just more or less not normal.
Yeah.
You know,
well, I mean,
the
thing is, I didn't wake up one day and decide to start dressing like a girl. Well, I guess I kind of did. I was 4, but it's an innate part of who I am.
Right.
But forcing it down people's throats is not an innate part of who I am. I dress like a girl because I want to dress like a girl, and it also is part and parcel of a great host of other things that go along with my identity. And so, just dressing like a girl and being like, all right, you know, I'm going to dress like this to make other people uncomfortable. It's like, no, I like dressing this way. I enjoy dressing this way. The fact that it makes other people uncomfortable, it's bothersome to me. I'm not going to stop, but I wish that they could get over it.
I mean, we just have such weird
strictures.
Well, I mean, we were founded by Puritans, and we haven't gotten over that. I mean, I remember, I think it was the president of Australia said, we're so happy we got the criminal. Because we're nuts. The stuff
they have more
that
fun.
We're still pushing, the rules that we're still making. I'm like, is this not the 21st century? No, I do.
Because we're so close to the end of our glasses, I feel like we should talk about the evolution of this wine, because we were talking about how 30 minutes of decanting was not...
Missing?
What?
I'm not getting any mint, any eucalyptus.
You're right.
That's not there.
No, this is an entirely fruit and oak driven Napa cab, which to my mind is not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing. I like finding those things in a wine, but I don't mind not finding them.
What was was it Paul Hobbs that's very eucalyptusy?
Yeah, Paul Hobbs has a lot of eucalyptus.
I was going to say, I remember that being very like off the bat.
I love Paul Hobbs as a winemaker. Great winemaker.
Yes.
Buy his wines.
We do enjoy our Paul Hobbs quite a bit.
Yes, we do. We will do some Paul Hobbs.
But this is if you're looking for a blackberry compote baked into a pie, in your wine. This is what you have going on the palate. And the thing is, the blackberry was there from the get-go with me. That has been a flavor that has predominated throughout this.
I even smelled it a little on the nose, yeah.
Yeah, but the as we talked about and kind of semi-predicted early on, I feel like the aroma and the flavor are a lot more integrated at this point.
Are. So at this point, it has been, okay, weird, wow. Yeah, it's been an hour and 15 minutes since we decanted it.
So
longer than that, almost 2 hours.
Okay. So the thing is that and I also want to highlight, this is not just a benefit you can draw from decanting more expensive, higher quality wines. A lot of red wines can, especially the heavier they are.
But you got to be careful. You decant the Apothic Red.
Right.
And you wait an hour and you've ruined it.
Well, what I would say is...
Ruin Apothic Red. Yeah, right. What the hell am I saying?
What I would say is say you're my father, say you're Ned May, and you're opening a bottle of your Trader Joe's, your Wegmans Bordeaux. And you're going, well, I don't really know how long I should decant this for. What I would do is this. I would take it, and first of all, just taking the bottle and pouring it into your that adds a lot of aeration to the wine. And so then just have a little sip. Just take a little sip and be like, see what you think. I mean, because the whole thing is,
because if it's good enough, there, go.
Well, and also if you're like, well, I don't know if it's good enough. Are you enjoying it?
Right.
But the other thing is, also wait 15 minutes, wait 20 minutes, wait 30 minutes. I don't know. 30 minutes is a good thing.
Those are Blue Jays, by the way.
Of course they are. They're the only things that's almost as fussy as crows. After 15, 20, 30 minutes, you're going to have a really good read on whether it's getting better in a way that you like. And if it's not, it's not going to get bad in 30 minutes. But if you're like, I don't really notice an appreciable difference, we're good here.
I thought we were going to do this, and I don't really think we are because it's a little awkward. But one of the things that I do often when I drink a wine is I pour a glass, and then I pour the rest into a decanter, and I drink that glass. Mm-hmm. And I make it last for a good long time, but I don't come back to there until an hour later. And then I can see what it's like right out of the bottle and how it tastes an hour later.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll wait another hour for the third glass, rather.
There's probably a way we could do that on video. I mean,
there's absolutely.
We could have the first. We could split a glass.
But I don't actually want to do it for
that's fair.
I think it's a little too many moving parts.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
And we're taking an hour on most of them, so we're getting to the end of that anyway in the glass.
But the point I wanted to drive home is that we decant some of these wines just because of the nature of what they are, and I don't want it to make it seem like decanting is reserved for only wines above a certain price or above a certain quality.
No, anything that's going to be tight, you can decant.
And the thing is one of the things that the consumer, us, everybody drinking wine learns is that there are some wines, certain regions, certain types of grapes that will almost always benefit from decanting.
Yeah. Like the Wente wine, I don't decant it. Yeah. I have decanted it, and it does improve. Yeah. But it's pretty good right out of the bottle. So
exactly.
It doesn't need as much decanting as others because for whatever, I think it was, I don't want to say it wasn't made to be aged because I don't get that feeling.
No.
But it was made to be drank.
Exactly. And that's the thing is that whenever I say something, is drink now, I don't mean that like if you don't drink it now and you keep it for a couple of years, it will be horrible. What I mean is that producers know what they're doing with their wines. Yep. They put certain things out as a way of being like, hey, you want some from we have to put something out for our customers. We want our customers to have stuff. And I had this conversation with my dad about a lot of the Bordeaux he buys. I was like, a lot of them aren't meant to be aged. Yeah. I was like, a lot of these aren't meant to be aged. He's like, oh, so I shouldn't be aging? I was like, no. You can.
You got to know which one's which.
Well, not only that, it's just like you can age pretty much any of those. They're Bordeaux, for God's sake.
The Cabernet is always going to age. They just
weren't. They're not.
Especially if it was oaked.
You and the average American consumer buying those are playing very different games.
Right.
And that's the important thing to note. And if you're ever curious, don't take our word for it. Buy 4 or 5 bottles of a cheap or Bordeaux from Trader Joe's or Wegmans. Set them aside. Drink one every 3 to 6 months.
You'll see the difference.
Especially
if it's 6. I would recommend 6.
Yeah, I would recommend longer. If the longer you can stretch it, the better, because then you really will. And if you keep a wine journal, definitely keep notes, because you will find, unless you have a completely 100% eidetic memory, that your memory will play tricks with you.
Oh,
absolutely. Write things down.
I didn't even remember that I had this wine. I gave it 4 stars last time I had it.
Right.
And I would give it 4 stars this time. It's a good, solid Napa Cab. It's missing a couple of things that I like. Right. But it has all the things that you do like. But it's got all the things it needs.
Right, exactly. It's not missing anything that's crucial.
Right.
It's just missing some of the things that are
the little extras that I might want that I'll pay an extra $50 for. You know, and they don't charge that extra 50, so I can't really complain.
And it's a 14.5. I would have guessed it was a little higher.
I would have too.
I mean
it's not hot, but
no, it's not at all. One of the things that
I
I didn't really mention at the beginning is despite its initial austerity, this is kind of a Iron Fist and a Velvet Glove sort of
the
wine.
tannins are really super gentle.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't gotten to the tannins because there's so little expression of the tannins.
But they're there.
Oh, they're absolutely there. I mean, I feel that puckery not just in my tongue, but like along my teeth and underneath my, my under lip.
Yep. The tannins in this wine are kind of like, in a more in your face wine. It's like a bass line that's like every note. This is like playing a bass with a bow. It's there and it's surrounding you, but you're not really thinking about it.
Now I'm going to go off on another tangent because the idea of I played bass when I was in the rock and roll.
I brought that up for a reason.
And one moment that really encapsulates the '80s for me was my band and I. We watched. Oh God, what was the name? Spinal Tap.
Oh yes.
We laughed so damn. I know a lot of metal guys are angry at that movie.
I don't see why.
Was brilliant. Well, because they thought they were being mocked. And they were.
Well, yeah, but
at any rate, a moment that encapsulates what 80s rock and roll, what 80s hair bands, corporate metal, hair metal really was all about. There's a moment when Nigel is just banging he's got a fiddle, violin. I assume it's a violin. He didn't play country and Western music.
Right.
The difference between a violin and a fiddle is country and Western music versus classical music. That's it. Same instrument.
Or about $2,000.
But he's banging this violin on his guitar while he's doing a solo.
Yeah.
And then he stops and he tunes the violin. You can't hear it. He's got 1,000 people screaming his name, but he tunes it, and I'm like, that was the 80s. Because that did absolutely nothing for the music.
Nope.
But it kind of looked cool.
Yep.
So he did it.
The style over substance.
Yes, I mean he plays this beautiful thing on the
Lick My Love Pump.
Yes, he's playing this beautiful piano piece. Yeah. And so he's like, oh, it's very influenced, but I think he said I want to say Sebastian Bach.
Yeah,
I don't remember. It's been a long time. We don't know where we're going, so I didn't research it.
Right.
He's like, oh, they're like, it's beautiful. He's like, yes, it's my masterpiece. It's called Lick My Love.
Yeah. That was probably my favorite part. The other part was when the
drummer keep dying. The drummer's dying. My favorite part was
the Stonehenge.
Yes, when they got Stonehenge and they tried to come out of those pods they had, and they got stuck.
They got stuck, and they have a fall coming
As
out.
a metal guy who we try all kinds of stuff. Now, my band had a place that was as big as any club, our practice space, and we had a stage built. So we never tried anything for the first time at a club. So we never had those problems.
Right.
But I can remember stuff, and I'm like, wow, I'm really glad
that we weren't doing that.
We have our stage to practice on.
Yep.
Because most people are practicing in little garages.
Yep.
We had a big-ass stage in a really large room where we'd let people come.
Right.
So we'd have an audience. We'd get the reaction.
That kind of thing is so valuable.
Oh, absolutely.
As a performer,
we videotaped our shows, so I'd be like, "Wow, I really hate that look on my face."
What
was that? Oh, okay, I know why I made that face. I'm never making that face again.
People have talked to me and they're like, I can't remember who it was. Somebody here in Florida was like, "You have a really natural stage presence." I was like, "Thank you." I was like, "I'm always scared whenever I get on stage." I'm like, scared. I'm like, I'm not terrified. I'm like, but fear is the currency by which I measure my investment in something. Yeah. And I said, if I ever stop being scared of getting on stage, I'll probably stop doing it because I don't want to do something that makes me feel lackadaisical. And they're like, "Well, I never would have guessed that you were scared at all. You seem so natural." I was like, the thing is, when I got my kind of, I don't want to say start, but it was my introduction to both music and performance together, playing piano at my church when I was 11.
I didn't even know you played piano.
Yeah, no, piano was my start music, actually. Okay. I started playing piano when I was 9.
You still play?
I do. I haven't played piano in years, but I learned to sight read. I could pick it back up in 2 seconds. But the thing is that kind of experience as a kid, having that kind of formative experience. One of the things I tell people is, if you're getting your kid into music,
it's just started raining, which is probably why Will's looking.
Oh, I thought it was somebody coming up the driveway.
No, that's the sound of the rain.
Oh, okay.
We're almost done, and we knew that we had a window within which we could do this. But we're gonna let you hear a little bit of the rain because we're not done talking.
But if you're a parent getting your kid into music, getting in lessons is important. I would say also finding the performance avenues is equally important, because that's when you learn to not conquer, but just integrate the fear of performing in front of people into your persona. And at that age, when your brain is still plastic, it's so important.
Now, I remember my first gig, but I don't remember the first 3 songs at all.
Oh, yeah.
I have this memory.
Out of body.
Now, we played in a club that only did metal on Sundays. It was a strip club, and they weren't allowed to have strippers on Sunday, because I grew up in Massachusetts.
That's hilarious.
That was founded by Puritans.
Yep.
So we still have these puritanical laws that nobody actually really thinks should be in place.
Right.
But nobody's willing to be the guy that votes to say, yeah, let's let people
Nobody
strip on Sunday.
First,
Nobody wants to be that guy, even though everybody thinks it's silly.
Right.
But at any rate, so they would have metal night on Sunday at these strip clubs, which had the best stages.
Oh, yeah.
They
Good
had
acoustics.
the best. Well, they had crappy acoustics, because strippers don't need good acoustics.
I guess that's true.
Acoustics, but they would also have the nicest They had the nicest backstage.
Oh,
area
yeah,
I'd
yeah.
ever seen.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You know, and if you did anything to hurt the mirrors, or gone, because most clubs you go to the backstage area and it's
just awful, especially back then.
All these people who are just morons, just do horrible things.
Yeah.
But you couldn't do it if you ever wanted to play there again.
Right.
But what I remember really, really clearly is the way we had it done is we had this smoke machine that just started pouring out smoke so you couldn't see anybody. And then the drummer hit the stage and he's going mental. And then out come the guitars and the bass. And I was just a singer in that band, my first gig. And they were just all you could hear is a wall of sound. And that was our point.
Yeah.
And then when the lights came on and went boom, we had a little explosion or something we did.
Yeah.
I would be there, but I didn't come out for like a full minute.
Yeah.
Because they were just making the noise, getting the crowd going.
Yep.
And then I would hit just as the lyric was there.
Yeah.
And my real memory of that gig is I'm in this place and there's a door to the outside, and I'm looking at a really big crowd. And I'm thinking to myself, if I leave right now, nobody will ever know until I'm gone. They won't be able to stop me. I'll be out of here. Because I was I was terrified.
Yeah, of course you were.
And then the next thing I remember is looking down to see what the 4th song was. Looking down at our set list. And I've got the video. We videotaped my first gig.
So you sang the songs
Not
and
only
did the
did I sing it, I had stage presence. I did all the moves I practiced. Everything the way it was. Nobody would know that I was completely not there.
Yep.
I knew the songs so well that I didn't need to be there. I sang those songs. And when I look back at the video, I have absolutely zero memory until just before the 4th song.
Do you think that was Euphoria?
I don't know what that was.
I think because
what it was. I mean, I have some vague memory
little
of
images.
The cue hitting.
Yeah.
When I did what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
But I was not at a place where I could actually think and think. I was functioning.
Yeah.
I
right,
was
you're
absolutely
functioning.
functioning. But I didn't have, and take that to where I was, 5 years later. I remember one video, I can look at it, and I'm rocking out. I'm just hitting it.
Yeah.
But I know what I was thinking is, damn, I've got a final exam tomorrow. I've got to get to the laundromat because I didn't have, I was poor. Or I wasn't poor. God, I made a lot of money, and I just went through all of it.
Right.
But at any rate, I didn't have a washing machine. That wasn't a priority to me, was to buy one. But I'm like, I gotta find a washing machine in whatever town we're playing in tomorrow, and get my clothes to the washer. So I'm on stage, just killing it. But I'm not there.
You're in a different place.
I'm thinking about exams, and I'm thinking about doing my laundry.
I would say honestly, it was probably. I mean,
versus being terrified and not remember playing.
But I think it wasn't just terror. It was a mixture of terror and euphoria. Because if it was simple terror alone, you would have bolted, or you wouldn't have even been there. It was.
Listen to this glorious sound.
This is wonderful.
I hope it's being picked up. We're almost done, so you don't have to listen to a lot of it.
It definitely will be. I feel like it will. But
I love
for me, as a performer, those moments of euphoria are like that, where I've had.
I know you play guitar.
Yeah.
And I've seen you play at the open mic here in town any number of times.
And the thing is I've never played music professionally long term.
So of course you can still play a piano because you know, the chromatic scale is the chromatic scale.
Yep.
And it's all right there laid out. I mean, I remember once walking up to a piano and I started playing You Give Love a Bad Name.
Yep.
Because I could just see
it's linear.
E and
it's
F
it's nice and linear.
You got E and F and B, C and B, and it's right there.
Having
like,
a keyboard.
It's like, wow, how long have you been playing keyboard? I'm like, about 3 minutes.
Yeah. the keyboards are nice. There's been a deficit in my life because if I'm trying to figure out a melody or a chord structure, there is nothing easier than a keyboard. And maybe that's because I learned on it, but also it's nice and linear.
No, I didn't learn on one, man. But if you know how to read music,
yep,
you know the chromatic scale,
yep,
and you know how to play an instrument,
yep,
you should be able to at least pick something out on a
piano is basically a deconstructed instrument when you get right down to it. I mean, you take all the notes and you put them into a linear format, and they're right there in front of you, and you can manipulate that however you want, as simply or as complex as you want.
Yeah, I mean that was my, you know, I played it. I was dun 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 dun. I'm like, oh, okay, I can do this, you know, because I knew the chord progression, and now I didn't necessarily know how to make the chords on the piano.
Right.
I could certainly, you know, I was a bass player, so I know it's 1, 3, 5 of your major or minor scale. You know,
so this week we covered religion. Next week it'll be music.
Yeah, well, we're covering music right
now.
But
we gotta get hardcore into the theory.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of music theory that I could really go off on, but I haven't even played in a decade, and yet I still remember, you know, from the other. Well, I said I haven't played in a decade, but I was over someone's house recently. They're like, "Oh, you play bass?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I haven't played bass in a long time, and I can't play more than one song, or the carpal tunnel kicks in."
Yeah.
But they're like, "Well, let's just jam." So I don't even know what the hell song we played. I just said, "What key's it in?" They told me, and I played 1, 4, 5.
That's awesome.
Based on whatever the kick drum was doing. Like, "Hey, you're pretty good." I'm like, I used to be great. I used to be really good. Not pretty good. I used to be really good.
For a living, man.
I used to really be into this. But, you know.
I was at a party not all that long ago.
As Paul Stanley would say, it is what it is.
I was at a party not all that long ago this spring.
It's interesting. Gene never said that, but his tech always said that. And I'm like, you've been listening to Paul, but they didn't get along, Paul and Gene's tech.
Well, they still don't get along, right?
Well, I don't know that he's still working with Gene. I haven't.
Oh, I meant.
Oh,
Gene and
Paul and Gene. I won't say they don't get along. There are times when they have issues.
Right.
But both of them are fairly mature.
Yeah, I mean, at this point.
They're very intelligent.
Yeah.
They're more mature than most. But I met a lot of rock stars because I was in a band, and we played in a lot of clubs. And then, of course, when I worked with Kiss, I'd meet everybody that opened for Kiss because I was at a bunch of Kiss shows. But the reality is that Gene and Paul sometimes butt heads, and when they do, you don't really want to be a dude who has to get approval for both of them. But then there are times when they're not like that at all, and they are like brothers.
Well, the thing is in any rock band, especially one like Kiss, I mean, the thing is you don't get involved in something like Kiss if you're a easygoing, go along, get along kind of person. You get involved in something like Kiss because you're dynamic and intense.
Well, you might get into Kiss if you're one of the hired guns. But you don't get into it.
Well, I meant the origin of the band, like what they were starting at the inception.
All 4 of those guys were just not like everybody else.
Right,
and there was a reason.
And they're going to butt heads.
And of course they did.
Yeah.
I mean, Ace Frehley, Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, Peter Criss, none of those dudes were normal.
Right.
But you know what? If you want to be in a band like Kiss, you can't be normal.
Right. Well,
and like Matt, I'm sorry, folks.
Well, and that's my point is that people are like, oh my god, like rock bands are so tempestuous. I'm like, well, you get a bunch of hot. Well, but the thing is that I was like, take your average painter, and I was like, the thing is that they might be an introvert, but they're probably like pretty. I don't want to say tempestuous, but they're going to be intense. They're going to be a dynamic person. I was like, okay, now imagine taking 4 painters, making them all extroverts, and making them work and live together and travel on the road extensively, touring throughout the year.
But you don't always get extroverts in band. I know.
A
drummer who was
I know. It's actually probably more likely to find introverts because the thing about the stage is that it separates you from the people around you.
One thing is I was never in a band without my guitar player, Jay.
Right.
If things would be in bands, they'd break up, and I'd get something going. I need a guitar player, and I'd call Jay, or Jay would get something going. I need a bass player, he'd call me. The great thing about that was he and I had written a ton of songs together.
Right.
So I remember we started a band, and the guy the drummer and the singer that we were bringing are like, will you be able to get us gigs? We're just like, are you kidding? You know, we have a gig on Friday. You need to learn 10 songs.
Right.
But we had 10 songs between us.
Right.
You know, because we don't do covers. Here are the
Yep.
originals. You get to learn. And then we played. You know, because the one thing you could be sure of if you're in a band with me and Jay is you were going to get on a stage.
It's funny how that works. You know, it's like somebody here in Floyd, it happens. People ask me, you know, like, what's so-and-so's band's deal? And I'm like, oh, well, this person is the guitar player and this person. And they're like, oh, they didn't know that. Because it's just a band name. It's called
Right.
whatever. And it's not, they don't tell you the lineup. And I happen to know a bunch of the people that are in bands around here. So I'm like, oh, it's so-and-so and so-and-so. I'm like, oh, I like both of those people.
Jay and I were in 4 bands together. We
Yeah.
were in a band called Room Service that never did anything. And then we were in Fallen Angel.
And that was the big
you know,
one.
we did a demo, and we did a lot of shows. And, you know, the one that was probably a little more popular was Wild Blade. Now,
Okay.
my stage name was Warren Wilder, and Jay Sadowski, who also loves wine, so I hope you're watching, Jay. Love you, man. Hanging
I'm glad
out with
you guys are
was
still
a
in touch.
privilege and an honor. And I mean that in every possible
Aww.
way. He was a great guy. Loved hanging out with him. But at any rate, his name is Jay Sadowski, which is why I just put that
Yeah.
out there. Well, his stage name was Jay St. Blades.
Okay,
And he got
so
the
Wild
Blades
Blade.
part because he was right. That's where Wild Blade came from. That was the name of the band.
Yeah.
And he got that because he was a big fan of Night Ranger, and Jack Blades did half their vocals and
okay.
played bass for
That's
them.
awesome.
So, and he looked, I mean, Jay legitimately, when he has hair, looks like Jay Blade.
Okay.
Like Blades. And, you know, and in fact, his plate said Jay St. Blades, and people were, when he drove, and people would always be like, oh my God, are you the guy from Night Ranger? I mean, he looked like
Nope.
it. I mean, I always used to hear, oh my God, are you the guy from White Snake? You know, because it's funny, because I never pushed that. I never really said anything. But I remember my wife was like, oh my God, you look just like the guy from White Snake. I'm like, well, when I was young and pretty, I'm not
Right.
young and pretty anymore. But when I was, oh yeah, between the two of us, I mean, we nailed that.
We need
The look.
to show some pictures at some point.
Yeah,
It would be,
you know,
it would
we
be
may
fun
try
to
to
bring
put
those
some
out.
pictures into this one. So
I think we should, because we're going to bring this part of your life up a fair amount.
Yeah.
And it's only fair that they get to see, because he posts these pictures sometimes. It's really uncanny. It's not, I mean, everything that he's saying is true, but it's also uncanny how much he looks still like his younger self.
I mean,
I think so.
I mean, I'm 58 years old, and people are always surprised when they hear that.
Well,
Now we're on camera, so I look 20 pounds heavier on these videos. That's the thing that's bumming me out. Now I've lost a little more weight since the last time I said I'd lost some weight, and I'm going to keep right on going. You know, I weighed 195 when COVID hit.
Yeah.
And my intention is to get down to 185, and you know, I'm under 220, and I'm creeping towards 215, so I got a ways to go. But you guys get to go on the journey with us, because I'm going to keep getting lighter.
and he will hold himself
I've done this
accountable.
before, so I know I can do it.
honestly on camera.
Yeah, and well, actually, that kind of stuff helps. 'Cause
Yeah.
I know, you know, last time I was on here, it's like, oh, I've lost 10 pounds, so I've lost 3 or 4 more
Nice.
this week, and so now I got to do it again.
Yeah.
Now, it's going to be hard, though, because, like, one of the things that I do every day to keep on this is I get on the scale every morning. And people are like, well, you shouldn't do that. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I got all kinds of things to say here that I won't say, because then I violate some of the rules of some of our affiliates. But at any rate, the thing is, I need to keep track. Because if I gain a pound tomorrow, then I gained a pound.
Yep.
Because if you only weigh once a week, you're me, you're going to put on 5 pounds and you don't know it for a week.
Right.
Whereas if I weigh every day, then I'm like, we're not going there. I gained a pound yesterday, so I'm then a little more careful.
It's always good to keep a journal, no matter what you're doing,
exactly.
whether it's wine or weight or whatever you might be doing.
You know, now I try to make sure my macros are good. I eat lots of protein, make sure I get good healthy fats from nuts and that sort of thing. And,
absolutely.
And then, you know, my carbs, I try to get enough carbs, but I try to make sure they're green, and I stay away from the
We need to delve into food
and
here
French
more.
fries, yeah. And, you know, I drink a lot less wine than I would like to drink because of all the carbs in the bottle and the 500 calories per bottle of red.
Yep.
You know, so I just knocked back 250 calories. Well, you know, at dinner, I didn't eat the starch, so that I have the 250. I got it.
I really liked earlier, we delved into a little bit of food and wine tasting stuff. I want to delve into that kind of stuff more. You and I really enjoy wine on its own, and wine can definitely be enjoyed on its own. Often is enjoyed on its own.
Do you remember the time that we had 1,000 Stories bourbon barrel.
Yes.
And duck.
Yes, at Mickey G's.
Mickey G's, and they wouldn't. So we wanted to order the duck, and they said no. And I was like, no, it's on your menu. And they said, but Michael, who's the owner of Mickey G's, is the only person who, he doesn't want anyone else to cook it.
Yeah.
Because it has to be done perfectly.
So we waited.
So when will he be there? And they said, they're like, well, he's not supposed to be here for 2 hours. But the sweet thing was, they texted him and said, Warren and Will are here and they want the duck. And he's like, I'll be there in 15 minutes. And he came in early to fix us the duck. But the duck was freaking phenomenal. It
was amazing. He served
with a bourbon barrel wine.
He served it with a broccoli rub, I remember.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was really good.
And by the way, if you're ever in Floyd, you have to go to Mickey G's. Michael is a fantastic cook. He's from Brooklyn. Mickey G's is an Italian restaurant.
People used
and
to make
a chef from Brooklyn who's could make if he were to take his restaurant and drop it into Brooklyn, it would not go out of business.
No. And people make the trek from outside of Floyd to come to Mickey G's, from North Carolina, out of state, to come to Mickey G's. It's that much of a destination restaurant.
Now, we brought the wine with us.
Yes.
He's got a couple of okay wines.
They're mostly Italian, and Warren, aside from Amarone, is not a huge fan of Italian wines.
No, well, it's not that I'm not a huge fan of Amarone.
They don't do a lot for you.
They don't do a lot for me because they're usually a lighter wine.
Exactly.
Now, on some of the Super Tuscans, where they really put it in French oak for a good long time, and they pump it up.
Or the Amarones.
But the problem is that just because it's called, a Napa cab of a certain level, I know I'll like it. But with the Super Tuscans, you can't be sure if you get a really big one, or if they're just calling it super for whatever reason.
Right.
Because the Tuscans that are just called Tuscans don't normally do anything for me. It's like, Sangiovese. It's a light grape. But there are places that do stuff with it that just punch it up and make me love it. The reality is that, it's not Pinot Noir, which I never really... Even the best Pinot Noir never lights me up.
Right.
There are some I'm like, that's pretty good. But none of them go, ooh, I got to have this again. But there are some Sangiovese. You can do it where I'm like, I got to have that again.
This gets back to confirmation bias.
But there's no way for me to know which one's which.
This gets back
until I drink it.
This gets back to confirmation bias, because how much of that is based around Italian winemakers who are trying to nail a certain type of American palate that just is not yours. Like, what if they were allowed to do with Sangiovese what they want to do, as opposed to... Right, no.
But the reality is Europe does not want their wines as big as we do. So they probably wouldn't do what's going to make Warren happy.
But the thing is, at the same time, I feel like they're starting to move that in that direction, at least some of them.
Oh,
because
of course.
They know how
we're
much
the biggest
drink.
market in the world. They want to sell to us.
Absolutely.
That's why some of the Tuscans I've had, the Super Tuscans, I'm just like, whoa. The first time that someone's like, oh, it's Sangiovese, I'm like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
They're like, well, would you just try it for me? I'm like, oh, all right. I'm like, and then I found out it was a Super Tuscan.
Right, they blended in Cab and Merlot.
And it was bigger, and there was more in it. And so I was really happy with it. I remember the first time it was at a wine bar in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And it was a really rare wine bar. We were talking earlier.
Yeah.
And I meant to get into this, but then we got off on another tangent.
Yes.
And this wine bar had a huge cellar. And I remember I was like, well, what do you got for Amarone? And we were at the chef's table.
Yes.
Which meant was we chose the wine, the chef chose the food.
Right.
And so we were getting all these courses. It was absolutely amazing. I wish I could remember the name of the restaurant. I could look it up, but again, I didn't know I was going there, so I didn't.
Right.
But at any rate, I was like, well, do you have an Amarone? He's like, I got 2 of them. And there was this was, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago.
Okay.
And they had a 5 years ago. It would have been 2005.
Yeah, 2007.
But there was a 210.
Yeah.
There was a 2015. That was it, or 16 or 14. It was something like that. And it was fresh. And I was like, I want the 210. And he was like, well, so, let's talk wine. I was like, sure. I was like, Amarone is my favorite wine. He's like, well, I know you know a lot more about wine than most people. I was like, why? He's like, because less than 1 in 100 people will tell me they love Amarone. Hell, that you even know what Amarone is, you may be the only person in this whole.
Right.
Well, this is a wine bar. He's like, dude, Italian wines and Americans just Chianti.
Yep. And maybe Barolo and Barbaresco if you're getting really lucky.
About Chianti, right?
Yeah.
On here with the guy from Malta.
Yes.
Okay, I have told that story. I don't need to tell it again. He wears a shirt that I think is brilliant. Now, one of the things that really, you know, he and I were both in rock and roll bands. Mine was metal, his was punk, but it was rock and roll. So we have that in common. And he and I both love wine. We both love reds, and we both love Rieslings.
Yes.
He has a T-shirt that says, "If you don't like Riesling, you're an effing moron." I think it's brilliant. And dude is
a T-shirt.
What's great is dude is a. Adrian, I love you. He is a wine importer, and I've seen him wearing this shirt at big events, and you know that's got to be offending.
That's wonderful.
But he was in a punk band. Of course, he's wearing a shirt.
No, I love it.
If you don't love this wine, you're an effing moron, because that's what punk is.
Yep.
That's like it's truth.
Yeah,
it probably is a truth. I really think if you don't like Riesling, then you really need to try a good one.
The thing is I would say if you want a full wine education, it's worth at least knowing what the important variety. I don't want to call them important. I don't want to set them, but there are varietals that you're going to encounter more often.
Yep.
They're renowned for a reason. It's worth at least knowing, and then you can decide for yourself whether or not you like them. It's not saying, oh, and then you have to like them.
I mean, being a wine guy who goes to a lot of wine tastings and a lot of wine things, saying I don't like Pinot Noir is a real liability.
Yeah. Not a liability with me.
But I'm willing to do it.
It's not a liability with me because my whole thing is trying to find something that makes the customer happy. So if you're honest with me, like, it's not like my feelings are hurt that you don't like Pinot Noir.
But when I go to a lot of wine events, they're like, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But then when we do some
You know exactly what you're talking about.
I do.
You know what you like and what you don't like. You're not saying it's a bad grape. You're saying you don't like it.
But when people hear that I don't like Pinot Noir,
I know their feelings
they come
get
to
hurt.
all kinds of conclusions.
Yep.
What's really amusing for me is that then we'll sit down and we'll do blind tastings, and they're like, "How did you know that? How did you know that?"
I like
wine.
wine.
I'm like, I could taste it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're like, but you don't like Pinot Noir. You can't have a good palate. Wrong.
As a sommelier, there is as a human being, but as a sommelier in particular, there's a categorical difference between the human being that's sitting at a table and you walk up to them and you talk with them about wine and they go, Pinot Noir is an awful grape.
But I don't say that. I say,
you don't.
I don't like Pinot Noir.
Which is a true statement. Pinot Noir is an awful grape is an untrue statement.
Right, absolutely.
But saying, I don't like Pinot Noir, that is categorically true and I can't argue with it. So let me steer you towards something that you do like. Tell me about things that you do like.
I remember one of my favorite novels, one of my favorite authors, and I will not say it because I don't want to go there.
Right.
He had this thing where these people were on a planet. It's like 1,000 years from now, and somebody discovered that they had a bottle of Pinot Noir. And they were so happy because this planet, for whatever reason, couldn't grow grapes. And they drank it, and they were like reminiscing. I'm like, no effing way in hell. That
Not for
wine
you.
is no. But the thing is, it's that too old. It can't. It was hundreds of years old.
But the thing is,
if
that's the only bottle of wine that you have, it's going to be pretty awesome.
No, it's gonna taste like.
Well, have these people had wine?
Yes, they came from Earth.
Oh, okay,
They all loved wine,
yeah.
and then they got here.
Okay, then that's not happening.
And they brought wine cuttings with them, and they wouldn't grow on this planet. They found an old bottle that was a couple hundred years old, and it was Pinot Noir, and they drank it. And
that's
I'm like,
that's
no.
not happening.
And the other thing that drives me nuts, and here was another story that I read, and they're like drinking these 100-year-old bottles that their grandfather had.
Yeah.
There's a lot of time travel going on.
Yeah.
But these are old wines. And at no point did any of the corks break.
Right.
At no point did they go, oh, that tastes terrible.
Yep.
Wow, that's not what I expected. No, they were all just amazing. And I'm like, this is a writer who's never actually had old aged wines in a cellar, because I bought a lot of wines from a cellar from a guy who knew what he was doing, and he cellared them right, and most of them were really good, but at least 15% weren't.
Yep.
And there was nothing you can do. You
Nope.
cellar 1,000 bottles of wine for 20, 30, 40 years. Some of them are gonna go bad.
Some are going to be corked, some are going to go bad, some
of them aren't good. They're gonna have the wrong amount of oak to age that long.
Yep.
Dude was aging wines he shouldn't have aged.
Yep, absolutely. No, and the thing is that that's completely...
But he aged a lot of wines he should have aged. My God, did I have some good wines because of him.
It's an understandable mistake to make because, as I was talking about, like when you go to a wine bar, most of the wines we have aren't that much older than,
what you buy in a
exactly, a current vintage. And when you get past a certain point, the wines that you have that are 10 and 15 years older are starting to blow your socks off. And so it's completely natural to extrapolate, be like, well, if it's 100 years old, it must be, up here.
But there's a point when
right, diminishing
there's
returns.
an arc, and there's a point when it starts coming down.
Yep.
There's also some are going to be compromised because somebody banged into the cork,
yep.
and now there's a little bit of oxygen that got
yep.
there. And some are going to be compromised back when they corked it. They
yep.
didn't do it right, especially the older ones
yep.
where, today they do most of them under nitrogen.
Yep.
Well, they didn't back then,
nope.
so you got oxygen out of the gate, and there's nothing you can do about that. And so these guys are drinking these wines in this story, getting drunk and really enjoying them. And I'm
yeah.
like, no.
Nope.
No, those wines are too old for you to be really 100. There wasn't a wine in the cellar less than 100 years old.
Yeah.
Well, I've only had a handful of wines that were 50 years old that had aged to a point where I'm like, oh my.
Yeah.
That exists. I've had 50-year-old wines that blew me away, but I've had a lot more 40 and 50-year-old wines. I was just like, wish I drank that 20 years ago. Of course, 20 years ago I didn't drink wine, but that's what it is. What it is.
I feel like we should end this segment with a nod towards the most important effect that has ever existed, and that's the placebo effect. If you think you're enjoying something, chances are good you probably are.
I'm not a placebo responder. 30% of people are, which is one of the reasons it's so hard to put snake oil salesmen out of business.
Yeah.
There are people who it doesn't matter what they do,
yeah,
they feel better because they did it.
Correct.
Now, I know that if I drink a glass of coffee and it doesn't wake me. There have been times when we were drinking coffee, everybody woke up with me, and I'm like, what the? And then we found out it was decaf. Well, everybody else was a placebo responder, and I was not.
They were getting a Pavlovian reaction from the taste.
There have been a number of things. It's not just coffee, but there's other things that I've had where they're like, well, this should be happening. I'm like, it's not.
Yep.
And it turns out that those happens to everybody who's a placebo responder.
Yeah.
The interesting thing for me about placebo response is it isn't just when you don't know it. There was a study done recently that then broke off into a bunch of studies that they did.
Yeah.
Because the guy was like, well, I can't let these people think they're getting this thing that will make them better. It's just wrong from
an ethical
standpoint. And I want to. So he brought in professors, PhDs, experts in the field, and he's like, you are going to be my placebo group.
Yeah.
You're on the placebo. Let me give it to you. And then he found out that 30% of them, which is the number of people who are placebo responders, even though they knew it was a placebo, responded to the placebo.
That's amazing.
And so then, that was such a thing. That was such a big deal. I don't know. But other people are like, well, that's just out there. That can't be right. But every single study that was then set up to disprove it proved it. That is the case. People respond to placebo even when they know it's a placebo.
I guess that explains the American voting system.
God, that's sad.
It was a perfect setup, though.
Yeah, it was. All right. So
all right. Well,
are.
We've been wild tonight.
Tonight we really went off the reservation. I don't know if I should apologize or say you're welcome.
Maybe both at once.
I'm sorry, and you're welcome.
Depending on whether or not you liked it.
And if you didn't like it, we'll miss you. But we're not changing who we are, and what we believe, and what we talk about. This is what we do.
Yeah. In all ways. Not just this, but
in all things.
This is
always.
what we do. Yeah.
So thank you for joining Warren and Will's Wild Wine Reviews. We'll be back next week. That'll actually be a month from now for Will and I, but you won't see a drop off. We'll be launching all this stuff. The great thing about the internet is it doesn't matter where you are. We can do it in Ireland.
Yep.
I will be in Ireland on Monday, but next Thursday we're going to drop one. Today's Wednesday. Yeah. For us, when you see this, it will be a Thursday.
Yeah.
We're just to give you a date. What is it? July 6th.
Yes.
You won't see this until probably August.
Right.
End of July. I don't know. But at any rate,
on a big time lag.
Yeah, there's a time lag. This is the first one that we've done since we've gotten some feedback, so we're happy that people seem to enjoy the blog.
Yeah.
And we haven't gotten any negative comments, and I was really expecting some because I thought I was going to come off as a pompous ass.
We're going to get those once we gain lots and lots of viewers.
Right now everyone's watching it as our friends, but on the other hand, I'm paying attention and I'm trying to, behave.
Right. We need to meet our friends. More critical friends.
No, we don't.
No, we don't.
So again, thank you. Again, we'll be back. For us, it'll be a month. For
Yeah.
you, it'll be a week. Have a great month/week.
We'll see you next time.